These are my top 5 tips for finally getting your craft room organized. Hey y'all, I'm Elisa, the Scrappy Wife behind ScrappyWife.com, and today we're talking about craft room organization. And I want to give you my top 5 tips for finally getting your craft room under control. So often we get very excited about getting our craft room organized. We're motivated. We get to the beginning of the month or the beginning of the week or maybe the beginning of the weekend and we think this is it. This is when I'm doing it. And we lose steam on getting that project done. Today, I want to share with you 5 tips that will help you get your craft room organized. You just have to stick to it. All right, let's do it. Tip number 1 is easy to say, much harder to do, but stop buying stuff. Stop buying craft stuff. Stop bringing new things into your space while you're trying to organize your space. That is like trying to rake your yard in the midst of a tornado. Do not bring anything into your space as you are getting organized. That is one of the dead set rules that you have to follow. It serves 2 purposes. First of all, if stuff is coming in, it's overwhelming as you're still trying to figure out where everything else should belong. So it gets jumbled, everything gets mixed up, it causes more chaos, and then you're left sitting in the middle of a chaotic craft room wondering what went wrong. So that just helps in the first place, just not bringing any more of those amazing chaotic craft supplies into your space. Also, it is a motivating factor. If you agree with yourself, if you make the agreement that, you know what, I am not buying any new craft supplies until this space is organized, you're going to be a lot more motivated to finally get that space organized. Stop buying things. Here's my other little aside to that. That also means stop buying organization tools that you don't know work. Here's what I mean by that. Sometimes we're fooled by some brand new organization bin or some brand new system or whatever the case may be. And we buy the system before we actually start the organizing, before we actually start moving things around in our space, figuring out what we need. We just start buying all these tools. Well, that's going to cause the same exact issue as if you bought a bunch of new sticker books or a bunch of brand new stamp sets and tried to bring them into the space. You need to stop buying things until you have a plan, until you've gone through your space, until you have decided what you think should go where. Then, and only then, can you decide what system do I need in that place to make that supply work. So instead of buying a bunch of clear iris cases for your scrapbook paper, figure out, where is my scrapbook paper actually going to go? Is a 12 by 12 case make sense? Am I putting it in a rack? How is that going to work? Figure it out first and then buy the things. So tip number 1, stop buying stuff. Tip number 2, it's time to get rid of stuff, to organize your space. I would say 90% of spaces need to declutter, destash, get things out of the way before you can actually start organizing. I know, it's so hard, but I use all my stuff, but I love all my stuff. Here are a couple of tips and tricks to help you figure out what do you actually use and what is just taking up space. So I have often heard of the hanger trick when it comes to figuring out what clothes you wear in your closet. Meaning, once you wear something, when you hang it back up, you turn that hanger backwards. After a year, if a piece of clothing hasn't been turned backwards, that means you actually didn't wear that in a whole year, and it might be something that you are ready to destash. You can use that same concept, but in your craft. That whole time and haven't used that sticker book, it's probably okay to destash said sticker book. You can follow the same rule with other supplies in your space. For instance, your stamp sets, turn them backwards after you have used them. That will let you know what stamp sets you have used and what stamp sets you are not reaching for, you're not using. Set yourself a defined amount of time. Some of you, 6 months should be plenty of time to figure out if you're using it, if you're not. Some of you prefer to go for a full year to cover all of the different seasons. That will work. really well, but give yourself a defined amount of time. With your paper, have it all in order. When you're moving paper or when you've used a particular maybe series, take it and put it in the back and scoot everything else up. Then you'll kind of know, oh, I haven't used these things at the very front very often, but I've used these supplies at the back. Figure out a system that allows you to kind of easily track what you're using and what you aren't using. And if you're not using it, it's time to get rid of it. Here's the other thing about getting rid of stuff. It's time to destash those old hobbies. Don't let older hobbies that you're no longer interested in take up valuable real estate in your craft space. Whether you have a craft corner in the corner of a dining room or a bedroom, or whether you have an entire craft room, we all have hobbies that have gone by the wayside. Maybe you used to love making jewelry and now you're much more into paper crafting. Maybe you used to love 12 by 12 paper crafting or card making, but now you're much more into planning and journaling. Some of those supplies overlap. Some of them you can probably let go. Don't let old hobbies weigh you down as far as the weight of things in your craft space. It might be good to box some things up, put them in what I would call timeout, meaning you put them in a box, you move them to the garage, move them to another room in the house. If you don't feel the need to get into that box for a few months, 6 months, a year, then it's time to let those things go. Tip number 3 involves those organization systems that we talked about earlier when I said don't go buy them before you've gone through your space and made a plan. Here's the other thing. Buy systems that can be multifunctional and that you can add on to over time. Don't buy a one box, one supply, will fix it all kind of system. Buy something you can add on to. I personally love the Home Edit system. I use their clear bins all of the time. They have a variety of bins that work together. It is a system I know that I will be able to add on to over time to adjust. They fit different types of supplies for different types of projects, and just the uniformity of the system makes my space look so much better and so much more decluttered and so much just cleaner to the eye. If I bought one box that works for paints and one box that works for washi tapes and one box that works for old planners, whatever the case may be, it starts to feel a little bit hodgepodge. Like it doesn't all come together, and it won't be visually appealing, and it won't feel as good to get things organized and to get them put away. The other thing is, as you're refreshing your space, as you're going back through, reorganizing, adjusting things, it's nice to have those bins that serve multiple purposes, because maybe you are destashing an old hobby that we talked about previously, but you have that bin left over that can be used for your new hobby because it wasn't so specialized. So keep that in mind. Get a system that you can add on to. I love going to stores. Walmart with the Home Edit line is a great place to look. The Bright Room line from Target is another great system that you can add on to over time. When you look at Michael's and Joann's, sometimes they have systems that have come and gone. So be really careful. Choose one that you've seen for a while that you feel confident that you can add on to should you need it. If you're investing in one of those cube systems and cube inserts, make sure you're not just buying one-offs, but that it's ones that you can add into over time. Super, super important, because more times than I can count, I've heard people that get really excited about a certain storage system and then it disappears and they're not able to use it, or it really worked for one particular hobby, but now they no longer do junk journaling, so they don't need all the Tim Holtz distress storage pieces that work just for those things. They needed more multifunctional pieces to invest in that they could use over time. Tip number 4 is for those overwhelmed crafters, the ones that walk by their space, you know what I'm talking about, and feel that heaviness on their chest or that pit in their stomach and just don't know where to start. It's too much. It's gone too far. You can't even get in the room. You don't know where to start. Here's where to start. Get rid of the trash. Go through with a trash bag. Literally start by removing trash from the space. That's going to give you a jump start. Yes, I promise you there's trash mixed in on tabletops that are covered. There's trash on the floor. There's trash from just purchases, like literally plastic bags and things from things you have bought in the past. Get rid of the trash first. Get yourself a trash bag. Go in and start by removing the trash from the space. That will start to clear out a little bit of at least a tiny sliver of breathing room so you can start working. Here's the other recommendation I have. Instead of kind of going around your whole space, going from this countertop to this countertop to just gathering things, a lot of times that ends up just moving things around the space. Start in one corner and work your way around. Start by clearing off one tabletop and then move to the right of that table and start on that bookshelf and then move to the right and start on those drawers. Work your way around the room. As soon as you can create one clear space, one space that feels good, that feels organized, that's going to give you that great feeling and that momentum building to keep you going through those tough projects. It is really frustrating to work on a space, trying to get it organized for an hour or 2 hours and then look around and feel like you didn't make any progress because everything is still scattered all over the place. Start in a very specific area and get that area done and then build on that momentum. Last but not least, tip number 5, organize on a regular basis. It gets really overwhelming, like we just talked about in tip number 4, when things get out of control. Set yourself a standard time when you organize. Clean up once a week, putting things away. Clean up once a month if that's what works best for your creative space. But set yourself a time where you're going to clean up and put things away and do a little bit of destashing. That will help you so much so it doesn't build up over time. Here's what happens. We get on a creative flow. We want to create all the projects, and I am all for that. But then the overwhelm of the space gets out of control, and it kills your creativity. It kills it. So organize, create, organize, create, organize, create, back and forth. Make sure you're making time for both things. That also means don't spend weeks and weeks organizing and not actually doing the creative hobbies that you love, because that kills some of your creative momentum. It's about finding that balance. And I have found that if I take time to organize on a regular basis, it not only helps the organization stay under control and stay clear, but it really helps promote my creativity over the long run, just because it's nice to work in a space that's organized. All right, now it's your turn. I would love to hear from you down below. What are your biggest tips for organizing your craft room? What are the things that you have heard, that you've implemented, that have worked really well for you? Leave them down in the comments below and take some time to read what other people have written there. It's so fabulous to hear tips from different sources, and I think this is a fabulous community that is full of all kinds of knowledge. So make sure to leave those down below. All right, that is going to be it. Thank you so much. I want to give a huge shout out to all of my Patreon family. Thank you all so much for all of your support. Over on Patreon, there is a tier for everybody, including a free tier where there is still plenty of bonus content that you can take advantage of. So if you haven't checked out Patreon yet, take a minute. There's a link down below. See what tier works best for you. All right, I hope that you have a fabulous day. And as always, keep it creative.